Clifton, welcome to the show and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this conversation. And we're going to jump right in and ask you, tell us a little bit about your story all the way up to Mindful Leader and your company, please.
Okay. I like to say my story is one that a lot of people take. It's money, migraines, and meditation. And I started off my career in hospitality business, restaurants, and I was a young up and comer, and I was successful at what I did. I made more money than I thought I would. I got to hobnob with people that I thought were very important, and I was in this industry that was very rewarding to me. It consumed me, like it consumes a lot of people who are successful in business. And what the manifestation was for me was my first migraines. And I haven't had any since, but I had a couple right around that same time. And I realized I had to change. I was getting a little too caught up in things that weren't exactly my values. I was, physically not feeling well. And it kind of culminated one time when I was at home, two young daughters. I got upset because I had to wait like 2 minutes after I was called to the dinner table. And these two little girls looked at me like I was a monster. And I just realized I had lost like any kind of focus on my life that was important. And so I thought, well, I'll try this meditation thing. I thought it was kind of a good idea. And it changed my life. I got into meditation and yoga and just balanced out. I wasn't somebody who was, growing my hair real long and I was still a corporate guy, but I just presented myself to my peers, to my family in a slightly different way. So basically what happened is I went through that corporate world and, worked for James Beard award-winning chefs, 5-diamond resorts. And I was really good at developing people. And I realized a lot of people just didn't understand this. Even at C-suite owners, they didn't get it still. And I realized I had a knack for something. I met a few people, and next thing you know, I was coaching. So that's my backstory on that.
That's so interesting. So you were called to meditation and yoga, almost like it was trying to bring yourself back to who you really were. You recognized yourself as somebody that you didn't want to be, and then you found meditation and yoga to try and bring you back to who you wanted to be. Does that summarize it?
That's pretty close. I think when I first got into meditation, I actually have worked in several Buddhist centers, retreat centers. I was on the management board of the Dalai Lama's Brothers Center in Bloomington, Indiana. And we'd get these little audiences, like 10, 15 of us in a little room with the Dalai Lama. And of course, that's like, it's very profound. And at the time I was like, well, I'm into meditation and I'm really kind of getting into it. I'm like, well, I can't be a monk because I'm married. And the Dalai Lama cut me off in his big baritone voice. And he says, we don't need more monks. You're a businessman. We need more good businessmen. And it changed my entire life at that point. I saw what I was doing as valuable rather than it wasn't an either or. I didn't have to be a monk and I didn't have to be a business. I could just be a businessman and help people be better people and practice more conscious business principles. Try to make the world a better place through business. Governments kind of get their hands tied. In democracies, we can see what's going on right now. Everyone's kind of duking it out in all these different countries. And then, you can't always do it that way, but business people can. So that's my path. That's my path. Really cool. And I want to help other people do the same thing.
So when you think about, the leaders that you work with now, are there tricks and tips that you apply or you ask them to apply in their lives? Not everybody has time to go and spend time at a retreat or with the Dalai Lama. So, I guess practical tips or practicalities within a very, very busy human's life that you could share with us, or how do you approach that?
That's a great question. And that is something that comes up because I truly believe that people want to do the right thing. You know, there's everybody wants to do the right thing, whatever their right thing is. And oftentimes we just forget. We get too caught up in, you know, the things we're doing rather than just being who we are.
Mm.
So there's different moments of the day where if you make it a practice to check in with yourself. First, I always try to suggest people figure out something. You know, there's so many wonderful meditation apps out there and free meditation, you know, webinars and everything else. So first, just get an idea, because sometimes people are so removed from themselves that they don't even know what being present means. Like
Yeah.
they don't know how they don't even know how to check in with their body. And so if you can first just get a taste of what it is like to be still. Then in the course of your day, I think one of your other guests has said it really well at one point. She said, check in with your feet, you know, feel your feet. And I thought that was great. I thought that was beautiful. I usually tell people, just check in with your body. You know, you can sit in your cubicle or at your desk and nobody has to know what you're doing, but you're just going through and doing a body scan and just feeling the energy flowing through your body. And you can do this in a minute or 2 minutes. Okay. So that's checking in with yourself and then kind of getting organized, you know, like, okay. And then there's other times that they should be a trigger. I have to have a difficult conversation with somebody. You know, maybe it's somebody that I don't like. Maybe it's somebody that, you know, they're okay, but I just don't like them. But, you know, I've got to deal with them. Well, just check in with yourself, feel where you are, think of something good about them, because everybody has something good about them. Think about their family, think about whatever, and treat them like a human being. And if you just check in a moment before those difficult conversations, or you're going into a meeting and there's a bunch of people, think about what is it you actually want to get out of the meeting. Because sometimes we get so caught up in I've got to send this message out. You're not like thinking, what do I actually want to get out? I'm sending the message to get something out of this meeting. So a lot of times throughout your day, there's those times where you're just like, okay, I'm just going to, before I go through that doorway, I'm going to take 3 breaths, just like we did, you know, at the beginning of this program before we started recording.
It's so valuable. It doesn't take a lot of time. It takes dedication, and you have to kind of remember to do that stuff. Take a breath, or feel your feet, like you said, or do a body scan. I love that too. Where, you know, if you really get it attuned with your body, you can feel stress. You know, sometimes I feel it in my throat when I'm about to have a difficult conversation, or you know, in my chest. And so knowing where it is in your body sometimes is just something that can dissolve it a little bit, or help you focus on it when you breathe. Yeah. So important. You
That
know,
whole idea of emotional intelligence, embodied emotional intelligence, that's a great thing, because your body's telling you, you know, you have all your hormones are going off, and, you know, stressors. And then once you understand that and you can feel it, you'll know when you're walking into something, like you said. I think that's great. When I first learned that, and it was just like last year through a Daniel Goleman's organization, it was amazing. It changed, you know, you kind of, you know, those of us in this, we kind of feel like we know already, you know, these things, and then you just learn something so new, and it's so powerful. So
so true. I wanted to dig down a little bit into something you talked about, which is difficult conversations in life, maybe with the lens of business to start. And you mentioned something that's so meaningful, and that's treating the other person that you're having a difficult conversation with, or that you're planning to have the difficult conversation with, as a whole person. And you mentioned something that I think I'm going to start incorporating right away, which is, think about something you like about that person, appreciate something about that person before you enter into the difficult conversation. It's almost like disarming yourself prior to. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And, when you think about conviction as well comes to mind, so you have to have the conversation, that this has to happen with your employee or your boss or your colleague. And first seeing them as a human and appreciating them, but then being convicted in the message and not being wishy-washy and coming in and making sure that you stand in your message or you stand in your delivery is another thing that I need to work on better, because I'm always trying to work around, protect their feelings, but really sometimes it's about like, here's the actual message. You're not performing the way that I need you to, and looking them right in the eyes and
Right.
making them still feel like I believe in you, but I need more, something like
Right.
that.
There's a lot of good tools, and sometimes there's one so easy, especially these days with Zoom. So anybody who has a Zoom relationship, if I'm talking to you and we're going back and forth, maybe I'm your supervisor and I'm like, okay, well, and we have regular meetings. Something is simple. I think there's OneDrive on Microsoft, the Google Docs. All you do is just you just document as you have a conversation. We both share these sheets. This is like one of the easiest things in the world. You have the sheet, you put the date, the time we meet, and it's a running sheet. So every week when we meet for a hour meeting, we just write our notes. What did we agree to? What are the deadlines? Everything else. So for those of us who are sometimes people pleasers or trying to not hurt someone's feelings, it's no longer, it takes it out of this right here. And we're saying, there's a sheet right here. We both agreed 2 weeks ago that you would have it done in a week. Last week, you said you would have it done this week, and now you don't. Explain this to me, like, what am I supposed to be doing here? And it really kind of puts the onus on the person you're talking to, like, you take all the emotion out of it. And that's one of the biggest problems, conviction in doing what's right. And it's important. And here's another thing I teach people, that when suppose you have somebody on your group, and they're not really performing, and you're working with them, and they're missing deadlines, and their work subpar. Maybe they don't like working with you. Maybe they don't like the job. Maybe they're just scared. So, there was this term we kind of used facetiously: I'm going to give you an opportunity to be successful somewhere else. And back when I started saying it, I didn't understand that that's a true thing. Some people, and as a leader, sometimes just kind of pushing someone out of the nest where they've gotten too comfortable actually does good for them. There somebody who grew into one of my best friends. I ended up having to terminate him once, and he ended up like doing what he wanted to do. He was like, okay, I'm going to go back to school. I wanted to get into naval intelligence. I wanted to do all of. He came back a few years later and said that was the best thing that ever happened to him. And you can do it with respect, the same way when you sit down with somebody that you need to get a higher level of performance out of. You can do these things with respect, and do it with love. There's nothing wrong with very lovingly telling somebody, look, if this happens again, I'm going to have to let you go. You need to understand this. And when you do let them go, people go, oh yeah, you told me 3 times that if I did it 3 times, I'd be gone. And this is my 3rd time. So I think there's a couple of different tools, but taking the emotionality out of it is one of the biggest things. And sometimes having that little running dialogue on paper that everybody can look at, both of us, it makes things a lot easier.
Absolutely. And as leaders and managers, it's our responsibility to disarm our emotions before a conversation. There's a lot of charge, or there's frustration, or there's anger sometimes in your psyche, and it's your responsibility to figure out a way to put that aside, to your point, to put the emotionality over here and deal with a human being. Yeah. Because it's not them, it's it. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a beautiful way of expressing that. Yes.
Yeah. And it's, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to post a meditation for our listeners about difficult conversations. So thank you for the inspiration for that.
Good. Yay.
A little prep sesh if you're having
Uh-huh.
a difficult
Uh,
conversation to ground. Um,
Good.
so tell me about coaching. I mean, I understand how it is to be slammed and busy, and I know you do too. And so when you're telling a leader, you have you thought about coaching, or have you ever done coaching? And they just think of it as another to-do list, like, oh my God, I'm already okay at my job. I'm already performing well. Why would I need coaching? Can you unpack that for me?
Sure, sure. So modern coaching started with somebody named Sir John Whitmore, and he's royalty in England. He was a young kid, wanted to race cars like with Steve McQueen. His dad's like, royalty, don't do that. So he's like, okay, but he ended up, he was privileged. He played tennis, he skied, and he became somebody who coached sports through that. So, other people would come and, CEOs and people of affluence would come to him. And he realized a lot of people were like really could be a lot better if they got out of their head and they got more into like feeling what was going on. So people, his clients didn't always get it, but then when he could get them out of their head, it worked. And then these CEOs would say, you really improved my tennis game. And can you do this for my business? And he thought about it a little while, and him and his partner, I think Tim Galloway, they started doing it. They started like working with these CEOs and said, how do you get out of your own way? And so a lot of times, especially those of us who have businesses, those of us who are leaders, we got to that position because we were inclined to take action. We are inclined to think most of the time we were right. And we marched forward. We just marched forward. There's not always somebody to hold us accountable. There's not always somebody who can speak that truth to power. So when sometimes I'm coaching, I had two C-suite people on a call about 3 weeks ago, and they both had this feeling that it wasn't quite imposter syndrome, but it was like they didn't have their life together. And it was such a wake-up call for them both, because they never really had that kind of dialogue with other people. So when that happens, all of a sudden you realize you're not alone. There is a pathway. And by getting coaching, you have that time to, someone else holds you accountable to do those soft things. Like your customers will keep you held accountable, your business keeps you accountable in a certain way, but maybe there's other things like slowing you down before you go into that conversation, or taking a moment of reflection to look at your whole life rather than just that positive part of your business. Maybe there's things where you work less, but you're actually more efficient, but you're so used to like driving forward in that way that you always have been successful. There's a great book out there, and it says, what got you here won't get you there. And that whole idea that you've got to kind of change as your roles change, as your business changes.
So true. Because the to-do list will always be massive and huge. And, the business to-do list, or the leader to-do list. And it's about being held accountable, like you said, to those softer areas that could actually help you be more successful, even in business and in life. So do you meet with your clients? Like, is it different for every client? Is it a once a month thing? Like, just give people a view of what this looks like if they're considering coaching. Like, how often, what's normal? I guess it depends on the person, but what's kind of typical?
It all depends. I try to not work in transactional ways, but what happens is usually somebody is told about coaching and they come, and depending on what they're needing, they're usually saying, look, I've got to get better at strategy, or I need to work on my people skills, or whatever. That's transactional. You're going to come to me and you think we're going to work together, and you give me money, and then I fix you magically. And that's not really how it works. It works by changing who you are. It's your being. It's you have a problem relating to people. There's something with you that is not allowing that. You change who you are on the inside.
Mm.
Sure, we can work on strategy and labor numbers and better time management, but in reality, it's just kind of changing who you are. So depending on the person, it might be something where you're meeting every week, in the beginning, and then every 2 weeks. I'm starting a program right now for younger hospitality leaders where you get coaching one-on-one in the month, and then you also have like a group coaching session later in the month. So it's just a couple times a month, but it's a nice entry point. What people can expect when they meet with a coach, you want to meet with a coach, see if you have a little rapport, see if they kind of work for you, see what their angle is. Like for me, it's a little bit of like, I definitely believe in you have to have profits in your business or you're not in business. And you've got to take care of your people and you got to take care of this planet. I believe very strongly that all those things work together. You'll have a better life if you're a better person, and you'll have a better business. So all those things, it's very holistic. So you find somebody, maybe that sounds good, and you come to me. Well, then we talk and we see if we have a rapport. And then the next step would be setting up like, okay, are we talking about leadership? Maybe we take some leadership assessments, or we just start working on one particular problem. And then it's about like unpacking the problem. What is your goal? What is your goal today? Why are you coming here? What happened? What happened this week? What is coming up for you? And then we unpack that, find out what some limiting beliefs might be around that. And then we move forward from there. Assignments, check-ins, maybe I have some resources that somebody else had that same problem. So that's what it is. But it's a minimum of once or twice a month, up to maybe 4 times a month.
Yeah. Wow. I've done coaching in the past, and I'm a diehard fan of coaching. And I've actually one of the reasons I reached out to you actually, because we really need to put this message out into the world. Can you tell me the difference? Because some people are listening saying, well, I already have a therapist. So can you tell me the difference between coaching and therapy?
Okay. So therapy is a wonderful modality to take care of. I think Robin Sharma calls it a heart set. Like you might have some sort of limiting beliefs about yourself, and you're not even sure where those things come from. And working with a therapist will go back, look at those, unpack like your heart and what's been blocked and, everything else, and help you function today better by understanding your past. Coaching is less concerned about those things. I mean, there's still a little bit of unpacking limiting beliefs, but it's a lot more focused on forward thinking. Okay, how are we going to, okay, we get it right now. You've taken on this company. You don't really, you haven't really progressed as far. Why haven't you progressed? And you don't really ask why questions too much, but there's a little bit of an understanding, like, why do you think? What is holding up? And then we just unpack that. Then we just say, let's come up with some goals and deadlines, and let's just do it. A lot of times action just dissipates all of your own personal neurosis. And so the main difference between therapy and coaching is, one is a forward-thinking, goal-oriented modality, and the other one is kind of figuring out why you do things from the past. And so for me, I've done both, and I find coaching to be a lot more effective overall. Just a lot more effective. I mean, if you have goals and you're goal oriented and you're kind of a business person and you're busy, sometimes you just want to figure out how you can move forward on something. And if you just figure out a few project related goals, then sometimes that starts changing you on the inside. That's my understanding.
I think you've articulated that perfectly. I always think of therapy more like healing or, that sort of thing. You're right, from the past. And coaching is like, it's performance. It's like, I want to be better as a human being. I want to reach some goals, or sometimes you go to a coach. One of the times I went to a coach, and I developed a coaching program with her, and it was a multi-month relationship. I didn't realize what I was looking for when I started with her. By the end of my time with her, I left the company that I was leading. And it was so instrumental in the work that we did together, because we look back at the goals that I set at the beginning and how it evolved over the 6-month period of working with her, it actually ended up being completely different than I originally thought, which was so interesting, life-changing, and impactful for my career and my life. So yeah, I agree with you. It's about performance, it's about goal setting, it's about like what actually matters to you as a leader, as a business person.
What matters to you? That's a beautiful way of saying it, because like in your situation, it sounds like what you did is you kind of went through some value exercises. Like, what are your personal values? And then all of a sudden you realize it's that classic Stephen Covey thing where you climbed the ladder of success and you realize you're up against the wrong wall. And that's really important. And if you understand, like sometimes I'm working with one client that Ivy League school, CPA, working his way in one of the big accounting firms. He didn't want to do that, but that sounded cool. That was something that was what the path was laid out. He looks great on paper, everything. He wanted to be a professor. That's what he wanted to do. So, that was what we determined. That's what came out of our sessions. And that's how we made that transition. So I totally believe that that's one of the biggest things, is just getting in touch. It goes back to the mindfulness thing. If you actually slow down and go, what sounds good to me? Why am I doing something that was somebody else's, goal for me in life? Or it just sounded really cool when I was 21, but now that I'm 31, it doesn't.
Yeah. And the influence of society and like you said, what looks good on paper for somebody's career, we are pulled into that in North America. Well, all over the world, I think we're pulled into that, and we listen to that. We give that more space than it deserves, instead of, like you said, getting a little bit quiet and saying, well, what do I want to do? Not what my dad wants me to do, or what my professor said I should do because I'm good at it. None of that. More just what is it that I want to get up every morning and do? And
Yes.
and we're not, by the way, audience, we're not saying coaching is going to make you change your career. No, we're not saying that.
No.
It's going to
No.
declutter. It's going to declutter the noise that you're getting, as Clifton said, that you get in your own way. We're trying to declutter that with coaching more than anything, right?
I agree. Well, let me tell you, for me personally, when coaching came into my life, I'm doing this hospitality. I'm trying to do some meditation. I'm trying to do, well, one of the things that was pointed out was I saw my position as doing one thing. I'm a corporate guy, I do these corporate things, I put money to the bottom line, blah, blah, blah. And when I saw myself doing that, it wasn't in alignment with who I was. And my coach said, well, there's another way to look. You're very successful at what you do. That means you've got 250 employees in that workspace today. You give them all jobs. You're a good boss, so you can work with mothers who are late because their kids were being dropped off at school or whatever. And you can adjust your little world in a way that makes the world better. As soon as I saw that, I loved my job. I loved my job after that. It was a paradigm shift. It was just like waking up to this other reality that was simultaneously going on. But I saw myself and I saw my situation in a way that didn't make me satisfied. And all it was kind of seeing it differently and go, wow, this is what I do. And I really enjoyed it. So I didn't have to become a yogi and live on a mountain and all that. All I had to do was kind of shift my focus. And that's another thing coaching does.
So it sounds like you were kind of judging it. And then when you thought more about what you were actually doing for humans, and you took a human approach to it as a leader, you appreciated that thing you judged more.
Exactly.
That's so
Exactly.
interesting. So in fact, it helped you appreciate your job more. And that's another interesting piece about coaching is, like you said, a paradigm shift or perspective adjustment. something that we can tweak, an aha moment, as Oprah would call it, right?
That's well, I judge myself on when I put my notes down. Had 3 aha moments, didn't have any aha moments, sad face, I'm like, how can I impact people to give them that insight? One insight can change your life.
Yeah.
One good insight can change your life. And that's what coaching does. Coaching allows that kind of reflection or seeing things different way. And it's not me telling you anything. It's like if a coach can do their job well, I'm just asking you the questions to get your brain to think a little differently. And
Yeah.
then you have your own insight.
Asking the questions that maybe we're a little bit too afraid to ask ourselves, right?
Too afraid. Sometimes they're super simple. There's so many times you get out of as a coach, you get out of a coaching session and they are thanking you and they just, and as a from the outside, you're just like, it was like, you just connected the dots. It wasn't even hard, but we get caught up in our own tracks and, oh, we only do this and we're only going to do this. And we never kind of think outside the box. And that's what the coaching session does. It allows you to see beauty where there was no beauty, possibility where it was impossible. And so that's, I love my job.
Oh, it sounds like it really fills your cup and you can end the day feeling like you've helped people, which really matters.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about group coaching because it's something that I've seen snippets of in my career. There are executive teams out there that run successful companies and put their team first, but maybe the executive team itself could operate better or more fluid and so is there such a thing as you mentioned one of the programs you're launching has an individual component and a group component. Can we talk a little bit about group component? What does that look like?
Oh, okay. So there's two different types of group coaching that I've worked with. One is a bunch of people that are kind of in the same level of their career, maybe they're all CEOs, right? Or they're all C-suite people, and that they have a certain level of responsibility that they share and a certain level of experience. And that could be whether you're C-suite or middle manager or whatever. Okay, so but they don't know each other. They come together, but they don't know each other. Then there's another type of group coaching where you said like an executive team. And if you do group coaching with those people, you can oftentimes, depending upon the group, they might not already have that dynamic where they trust each other or they know each other for that matter. A lot of times executive teams, like, you meet once a week, but the operations team has a problem with the sales team or vice versa. They're blaming each other, whatever. And so when you get them in these group coaching situations and you can deep dive, that's ideal if you can deep dive for a few days, then follow it up with, like weekly sessions, or bi-weekly or whatever. But I think what those do is they allow people to realize that they have the same challenges, right? So you get this group of C-suite people that have never met each other. They can kind of help each other a little bit too. Oh, yeah, by the way, I had that same problem. Well, once you feel like you're not the only one in the room with a problem, you realize the answer is out there. You just need to explore it either with this group, online, with your own personal coach, whatever it is, right? So that's one. On the other side, you have this group coaching with an executive team, and this executive team works together, but they're kind of thinking it's that person's fault or that person's fault, rather than saying, oh, wow, in the whole hotel, every single department is short-staffed. So of course, the salesperson's writing up this contract that's a little incomplete. The operations people don't have as many people to pull off this wedding as we thought. And then they get around, and then they can help each other too. They end up working and helping each other and understanding each other and speaking to each other as humans, not as, oh, he's the senior director of sales. Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about human connection.
Exactly.
That's it, right? That's why you can't do business without human connection.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think don't tell anyone, but I think it's a lot about love, right? Why do you go to your favorite coffee shop? Do they have the best coffee, or do they make you feel good when you go in there? And there's a certain level of like, that's what we're searching for,
Mhm.
whatever it is. And then if you can figure out a way to convey that within the context of the business world and your product or its service, your relationships with the people you work with, that goes over really well. Then people feel like there's trust. People feel like I can make a mistake without, getting fired, or I can have an honest conversation with a peer of mine, and not worry about it because I have that personal connection with them.
Absolutely. One of the things that has come up in recent weeks with some of my clients is how we make people feel like they've got it, like you can do this. It's not,
Mhm.
you say it, and if you're insincere, they can tell. So it's like, how can we have every interaction of our day with all of our peers, bosses, and people that report in? How can we make every human being feel like you got this at the end of a conversation, whether it's a motivating conversation, a business conversation, or like we talked about earlier, a difficult conversation? And that is something that I'm working on personally, because sometimes, we'll have like just a drone, kind of like we'll drone ahead, all action items, blah, blah, tick, tick. At the end of the conversation, you kind of leave feeling a little bit sluggish, a little bit low. But if there's an energy around, hey, I believe in you and I'm going to do this for you. And, if you can shift the energy to make the other person that you're dealing with feel like they've got this, then meetings
Mhm.
become more fun. And to your point, it's kind of about love and trust and all those soft things that we don't like to talk about in business. That's actually
Uh-huh.
really, really important for productivity.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's super important. And why would we want to leave any interaction, whether it's a clerk in a store, one of our employees, a client? Why would we want to leave any interaction with that person feeling diminished rather than enlivened?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that should be our goal. Like, why wouldn't you want to spread joy? Like, your workers work harder, your customers buy more, your clients produce more, whatever it is. So
Yeah,
I agree with you.
it's true. And when you're in a really happy mood and you're trying to pay it forward and it's easy to do, but the hardest is when you're kind of feeling overwhelmed, or normal feelings in a busy person's life. That's when you really got to dig down and
Uh-huh.
make it happen. And all of a sudden you realize it worked for you too. You actually lifted yourself up by doing that for the other human.
Yes, that's it. You make the world a better place. You're making your life better.
Yeah, it
So
sounds cheesy, but it's so real. Like I see it every
it's so
day.
real.
It's so real. It's so real. I watched my daughter the other day compliment a person at the grocery store about the color of her sweater. And I was like, there it is. That's just it, right? It's just, I love that about you, stranger. She's 7, my daughter. And
Uh,
so it's like, that's what it's about. It's about, taking the world and kind of lifting it up, lifting other humans up somehow. And she, I hope she rides that wave for the rest of her life.
yeah, that I think it's great, and she probably, hopefully, she will. It seems like the world is kind of catching on to these things, and sometimes in the past, the world kind of poo-pooed them or put them down, or
Mhm.
whatever. But she will. With a mom like you get it.
Yeah, we'll
So
see. Well, speaking of feeling energized after our conversation, thank you so much for all of these gems of advice and snippets. And I'm hoping that those who were teetering on the fence of should I get a coach or not have been influenced by your words today. And Clifton, can you tell us where the audience can find you on your, a website or something where they can look you up?
yes, my name's Clifton Carmody, and I think I might be the only Clifton Carmody on the internet for some reason. But you can check me out at mindfulleader.com, and there's no vowels. I don't like vowels. Or no,
Mhm.
or you can check me out if you're into hospitality or restaurants or anything. You can check me out at hospitalityleadership.coach. So feel free to
Excellent.
look me up, LinkedIn, whatever you want to do. And if you just have questions about coaching, I'd be happy to answer those too. I just want to spread the good news. So,
Yeah. And like you said, it's about finding that coach that you can build rapport with quickly. And it doesn't mean it's it's not a good person if you don't love them the first out the gate, but you do need to spend that time kind of finding the right coach for you and what they're all about and what you're all about. So I guess for the audience, don't expect to find that perfect coach right out the gate. Maybe you have to go through 1 or 2 interviews, but that's okay too. Yeah. Well,
yes.
listen, I'll post your website and some links in the show notes for our audience so they can reach out and ask you questions. And thank you again. I learned a lot today, so I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
It's been my absolute pleasure, and we will stay in touch, I am very sure.
So, thank you.
Thank you.